So you want an Aprilia RS457, and you're not alone. The RS457 is ushering in a whole new generation of aspiring Eurosimps who want a taste of that oh-so-sweet Italian marinara. This bike really is one of a kind, combining Aprilia's race-bred DNA with A2 compliance. The RS660 was already an early frontrunner for the new era of balanced, street-worthy parallel twin sport bikes, and Aprilia may have just upped the ante for the beginner bike segment as well, offering a premium track-ready bike that makes more approachable amounts of power. But is the RS457 even considered a beginner bike? Can a beginner bike really be this premium? Or is it just unfair to all the Ninja 500 fanboys out there? We're gonna get into that and more on today's video, so sit back and relax, it's gonna be a good one. And of course, it's worth mentioning, we have an Aprilia RS457 as our current Yami Noob giveaway bike. I've been having a blast with this machine, and I am so stoked to be able to give it away to one of you lucky squids. So if you want an RS457, head to yaminoob.co and learn about the giveaway and how to get entered to win. This is a really short giveaway, and entries are going to conclude October 4th, so you have a very limited time to get entered to win, and you're not going to want to sleep on it. Without further ado, let's get into the video. Aprilia is a manufacturer that's arguably most known for their world-class racing machines. The RSV4 has won multiple World Superbike Championships and has been their flagship machine since its debut in 2009. The RSV4 was in many ways the inspiration for the RS660, Aprilia's awesome middleweight sport bike that, as I mentioned, was really an early innovator for the modern middleweight sport bike. Its 270-degree parallel twin takes many design cues from the larger V4 engine in the RSV4, being essentially built from the front bank of the Superbike engine. The RS660 is much more versatile and approachable than its 200-plus horsepower predecessor, and it's been a pretty smashing success since it hit the market. Adopting much of the race-derived design and many of the features of the flagship machine, the RS660 has been pretty unrivaled in the middleweight category. Its engine puts down a very nice 100 even horsepower, the power is smooth and linear thanks to the torque-rich 270-degree twin, which makes it feel at home on street and on track. The engine has a really nice zip up to the redline, making it very exciting and almost super sport-esque. But the ergonomics are as balanced as well, with a sporty stature that's not immensely fatigue-inducing like a traditional 600cc sport bike. The RS660 is also outclassing its middleweight contemporaries with its highly advanced IMU-controlled ride system distilled from the RSV4. Since its debut, the not-so-super sport category has massively expanded with bikes like the R7, the GSX-8R, and the Daytona 660. Not only was Aprilia the first to spearhead this Twins Cup class of motorcycle, they arguably mastered the formula and created a bike that is hardly rivaled by those who came after it. We had an RS660 as a giveaway bike a couple of years ago, and I really enjoyed that motorcycle. It's certainly one of the best in the category, despite its slightly high price point. The middleweight parallel twin class isn't the only category of motorcycle that's getting a lot of attention these days. Beginner bikes are seeing tons of advancements across the class and lots of development and investment. Engines are getting bigger, and features that have been historically reserved for more advanced bikes are making their way down to entry-level machines. But one could say that we've sort of maxed out the beginner bike bell curve. Manufacturers are limited in the amount of power their bikes can make in order to retain A2 compliance, so we see bigger engines that are making similar peak power with a little bit more torque than the ones that came before it. Combine that with the fact that these motorcycles are getting restricted by European emissions controls, that makes these motorcycles' engines have to become bigger to reduce the amount of hydrocarbons. And a lot of the features and tech are a little superfluous on these bikes. Beginner bikes are starting to get bloated with features so that they continue to capture the allure and illusion of novelty for each coming generation of new rider. And as the typical entry-level machines are kind of stuck in this cycle, premium brands that have previously eluded the beginner bike category have started throwing their hats into the ring. Triumph recently launched their 400 class bikes that had a massive global appeal, selling more than 50,000 units in their first production year. And while the RS457 is a drastically different type of bike, it has sparked similar massive community interest. Even during its development stages, new and experienced riders alike were chomping at the bit to learn more about Aprilia's entry-level bike. And I can attest to this because on our Discord server, people talk about the RS457 all the time. Since it hit the market, the buzz has only gotten more intense. I feel like the RS457 is one of the most discussed motorcycles on the market these days. I feel like I read comments and messages saying, Yam, have you reviewed the RS457? Or, Yammy, what do you think about the new Aprilia? Well, here we are, guys. I bought one for all of you, and all of your questions will or have been answered. But Aprilia hasn't made a small displacement sport bike since the RS457 that was made in the late 90s and early 2000s. And a 250cc two-stroke sport bike is worlds away from what we would consider a beginner bike today. And by a lot of old Hoagie standards, a 250cc two-stroke is God's sport bike. It is perfect, lightweight, revvy, and fun. But a homologated two-stroke race machine that was only sold for track use in the US is really night and day from how the RS457 is positioned in this market. The RS250 was last produced over 20 years ago, and in that time, no other Italian manufacturer has really offered much in the way of a true entry-level bike. Entry-level is probably the most accurate way to describe the RS457, instead of calling it a beginner bike. While it may not be the most ideal starting point for motorcycling as a whole for many new riders, it can serve as an entry into the Aprilia brand or an entry into racy sport bikes. But we'll talk a little bit more about where it specifically slots in the world of small displacement bikes in a little bit. We must talk about the bike in and of itself first. Aprilia's goal with the RS457 was to make the most premium small displacement motorcycle available, eschewing the idea that small bikes need to be lackluster, disposable machines that are outgrown and passed on quickly in favor of larger bikes. There are many things about this bike that make it immensely special, but why not start with the engine? The RS457 uses a 457cc 270-degree crank parallel twin. Aprilia made it a point of being very clear they didn't just shrink down the engine from the RS660, but started from scratch in an attempt to create a truly class-leading engine in this category. And to be honest, if they had just hit the RS660's engine with a shrink ray, reducing the bore and stroke size to make it a 457cc, it would have been way more expensive than it actually ended up. So starting from the ground up made a lot of sense, having learned how to build a parallel twin in the first place. The 457 makes 48 horsepower at the crank and 32 foot-pounds of torque, with Aprilia claiming over 80% of the torque is available by 3,000 RPM. This bike weighs 385 pounds, meaning it just barely falls within the appropriate power-to-weight ratio to retain A2 compliance. This engine makes peak power at 9,400 RPM, so it's not a massive screamer like you'd expect from a smaller displacement engine. And Aprilia instead opted to strike a balance between accessible torque and peak power, not unlike other parallel twins in the class. The RS457 is also special because of its true cast aluminum frame. This isn't a Daytona 660 with the faux aluminum cover just to make you think it has a real sport bike frame. It is a real deal cast aluminum frame. It's the only one you're gonna find in the sub 500cc category, and if you guys watch my first ride and review of this bike, you know what a big deal this is. It has a single bi-brie disc in the front. The engineers actually looked into adding a twin disc setup, but found that the rotational and gyro forces in the front kind of curbed the handling a little bit, so they kept the one disc, and it helps with cost too. And preload adjustable fork and monoshock. There are 3 ride modes, 3 levels of TC, and switchable rear ABS that can all be tweaked by the track day junkies that are wont to optimize the level of machine interference. But the RS457 does come with a slipper clutch that can be outfitted with an optional quick shifter, which I'd highly recommend to complement the way this bike was meant to be ridden. We didn't get a quick shifter on ours, and I really wish we had. This is a small sport bike, so the ergonomics are rather compact, but it still strikes a balance between an ultra-aggressive sport bike and a really relaxed beginner bike. It's kind of splitting the difference between an old-school Ninja 300 where you're way up high and an RC 390 where your butt is way up in the air. Aprilia recognizes that this motorcycle is aimed for newer riders who probably don't have the means to have a sport touring bike and a track bike, so the RS457 is designed in a way for it to be functional for track riding and street riding alike. To top it all off, the RS457 comes with an MSRP of $6,799. It's priced a tad higher than what we'd think of the average entry-level machine, so that does bring up the question, is this really a beginner bike, and how does it stack up against the competition? Is the premium riding experience worth the extra coin it's gonna cost you? One of the most direct competitors in the sub 500 sport bike class is the Ninja 500. The Ninja 500 recently replaced the venerable Ninja 400 in Kawasaki's lineup. It has a 451cc parallel twin with a conventional 180-degree firing order that makes 51 horsepower and 32 foot-pounds of torque. The Ninja 400 has been a tried and true platform for years, and I've been an evangelist for it for years now too, having raced several myself in endurance and in sprint racing. And the 500 is arguably an unnecessary upgrade, but come on, how's Kawasaki supposed to stop losing customers to CF Moto if they don't round it up? Anyway, a Kawasaki Ninja 400 or Ninja 500 are great platforms. They're readily available, have a tried and true track record, and are pretty cheap to own. Would you be better off buying a used Ninja 400 for $4,000 instead of paying for $6,400 for a Ninja 500 SE with a TFT dash and keyless start? Certainly, because pound for pound, a Ninja 500 for $6,400 makes a hard case for itself when the Aprilia RS457 cost $400 more. The real downsides for the Aprilia are the fact that it's an Aprilia. No matter how awesome and fun the bike is to ride, your dealer access may be limited, and it's going to cost you a little bit more to purchase, insure, and maintain. And there is also the concerns that arise from purchasing a first-year production motorcycle. Aprilia did have issues with the first-year RS660s, but those were remedied through warranty work and then basically non-existent in the following model years. But hey, that's what a warranty is for, you know. I'd say the CF Moto 450 SS is in the same relative category as the RS457, but they are appealing to drastically different buyer demographics. I'm not really sure what type of person has the means to purchase an Aprilia and is actively considering a CF Moto as well, but I'm sure they exist. But that being said, I'll be brief. The 450 SS has the 270-degree parallel twin that makes 50 horsepower and 29 foot-pounds of torque. It has a Brembo caliper, a TFT display, winglets, and a funny LED light-up startup sequence, and it costs $5,700. Their dealership network is growing very quickly, but they're still not as common as dealerships that service or sell Japanese bikes. Parts are probably more difficult to come by, and it doesn't have a ton of aftermarket support. They've only been in production for a couple years, and they're made in China, so that may be a deal breaker for you. One of the biggest things preventing the RS457 from being considered a fully fledged beginner bike is the price and the sort of emotional baggage that comes from having such a premium machine. Speaking philosophically here, beginner bikes should be cheap. They should be basically disposable, like a used Ninja 300 type of thing. They're going to be dropped, mishandled, and stalled. Beginner bikes are meant to be abused for a few seasons and then turned into a track mule or sold to another rider. It's the reason why the MSF has a litany of absolutely humble, mule-like little Rebel 250s. Buying a pretty premium, kind of pricey Aprilia, regardless of its A2 compliance, definitely shouldn't be the move for every single new sport bike rider. There are so many things to learn and to experience and to blunder in the first few years of riding. It doesn't make a ton of sense to do that on a premium bike like the RS457, even if the power output falls in line with what we consider a beginner bike. But with all that being said, Aprilia definitely has a certain buyer in mind who will be more than happy to jump on a small displacement ape. If you're an older person who's getting into riding a little later in life, I'm talking like 35 plus, with a little bit more disposable income and a predilection for fine Italian sport bikes, the RS457 might be the right bike for you. If you put in a season on an old Ninja 300 or a CBR 300R and you know the fast boy life is for you and you're not looking for tons of power but a more exciting and characterful riding experience, maybe the 457 is going to suit your fancy as well. It is substantially cheaper than a 660 and provides a very similar riding experience. The 457 is kind of a beginner plus-ish bike that is appropriate for certain new riders, though not necessarily in regards to the amount of power, because the cost of entry, the cost of ownership, and the potential risk you may be assuming by getting a premium Italian sport bike when you're new to riding. But for the right person, it may be the move. In fact, it could be compared to the ZX4RR in that way. Can a beginner start on it? Sure, I guess. Kawasaki even listed on their website as beginner friendly or something like that, but there are likely better and cheaper tools for the job. But for newer riders who want a unique experience and have more predilections for sport bikes and are willing to assume the risk that comes with a more expensive, purposeful machine, I can understand the decisions. But all of these considerations aside, the price and the definition of a beginner bike, the Aprilia RS457 is a really wonderful machine that's kind of a one-of-a-kind in the current small displacement bike landscape where power is limited to maintain A2 compliance. It maxes out that power-to-weight ratio and then built a purposeful premium sport bike around it without compromising or making concessions you'll find on other small displacement sport bikes. Thanks for making it all the way to the end. I'm having a ton of fun with the RS457 right now, and I hope you've been enjoying the content we've made with it. We've got some really cool new videos coming out before the giveaway wraps up on October 4th, so be sure to follow along and head to yamanoob.co to secure those entries so you have a chance to win this bike. I am the only person giving one of these away in the known universe, so make sure you get entered to win and keep your eyes peeled on the channel because shortly after October 4th, we're backing it up with another giveaway bike that you're not going to want to miss because it's very similar to the RS457. Thanks again for watching. I'll catch you on the next one. Fact: the world's oldest wooden wheel has been around for more than 5,000 years. Goodbye.
Fellas,
Time's up. This video is over. Do you know what else is running out of time? This sweepstakes for the RS457. I really don't want you to miss this. This bike is super cool. It's hard to come by and it's brand spanking new. If you're a beginner sport bike rider or if you're an experienced rider that just wants an awesome, fun toy, head over to the website, sign up and become a member, and don't miss your chance to win this RS457. And I suppose you could keep watching Amy Noob right over here or here. It's somewhere. I don't know. Go watch it.